thank you for coming today. I've just returned from West Papua and specifically to the Bird's Head region, and that's in the western side of West Papua, and the town of Marakwari, where I once lived many years ago. And so it was a very important experience for me to not only meet up with friends, but also see the condition of the West Papuans themselves, and to meet with the leaders of those who are resisting Indonesian rule and are demanding independence. I suppose a number of things really stand out to me in terms of my visit. Firstly, that while I saw no military conflict going on, there were reports from all around West Papua of those conflicts happening. I had eyewitness reports come from people who came from the island of Yapen, where there has been ongoing military action and the terrorising of villages, the burning of homes in the island of Yapen, but we also have reports of that in the highlands, in the Jaya region, and also in Merauke in the south and other places. I'm very much aware of the fact that Indonesia is seeking to come to terms with the violence of its own past, and yet in West Papua that violence continues. And I met with people who were the victims of various massacres, including the Biak massacre in 1998. And this lady here is one lady who I did interview, and she told me the story from beginning to end of what happened there and what happened afterwards. And we perhaps will never know how many hundred died. Somewhere between 200 and 700 people died in that particular massacre. And the people are traumatised until this day, including this woman who also has lost a daughter as a result of that, the ongoing trauma. So that's just a few words about the military build-up in West Papua, and it's particularly tight at this time because of the lead-up to the presidential elections. The people in Marakwari who in the past have been able to have some small window of democratic action, some space to protest, now no longer can do that. And so there's not even a facility for West Papuans to take to the street about anything. And it's not just because I suspect of the presidential elections coming up, but I am presuming that the military are positioning themselves for any changeover. The other aspect I really want to say is how much the counterintelligence of the Indonesian military have penetrated West Papuan society at every level. And to the extent now that the West Papuans are living in fear of family members, because there are so many people who are paid by the Indonesians to spy on the West Papuans themselves. So whether it's the taxi drivers, the small taxi facility in the bike taxis, the people who sell food in the little side stalls or in the shops, or in various aspects of the bureaucracy, Basically, we have something as bad as or worse than what was East Germany in communist times. My own experience was very small, but after having preached in a church, we went to lunch, 5 of my friends. We sat in a little restaurant, and we were followed by 2 Japanese-looking men who sat down at a table next to us and then turned their chairs and looked directly at me and directly at the West Papuans. My friend who was with me then addressed that man very strongly and told him how rude he was and to actually leave. The man then just turned around and they sought to try and photograph us, but didn't get the opportunity and had left. And that is what the West Papuans have to cope with all the time. The number of meetings I had with people in homes, there had to be people placed outside the house, at the road, wherever, because the West Papuans live not only in this atmosphere of fear, but distrust one to another. The other thing that I would like to say is that having returned after many years to Manakwari, I see that the population has increased threefold. However, most of that increase is from non-West Papuans, both from transmigration at a planned level and informal, internal transmigration. These also would constitute a lot of that increase in population from the children and grandchildren of the transmigrants who were shipped over in the 1970s and 1980s, who are now living in the cities. Unfortunately, all the money that is going into West Papua, and we understand from many of the public statements that millions of dollars is pouring into West Papua. It's going to the bureaucracies. It's going to the building of offices. It's going into the multiplication of those who, the pejabat, or those who are in positions of authority and in the civil service, and therefore also the multiplication of the military levels. So probably 80 to 90% of that money is actually going to those different levels of bureaucracy, plus also into corruption to both Indonesian and Papuan officials. While I was in Manakwari, it was announced that the region of Biak had been arrested for high-level corruption, using money that should have gone to development for his own election campaign. I read in the newspaper on the way out that the regions in the Sorong area and another area those 2 regions are being investigated also for hundreds of thousands of dollars in corrupt use of money. And so here we have statements by the Indonesian leaders saying that West Papua and Papua get more money than any other provinces, and yet it is absolutely evident that that money is not doing any difference, making any difference on the ground. That 80% of the people of West Papua, the West Papuan people, are living in absolute poverty, and even the small-scale economies of the families that sell betel nut and vegetables has now been taken over by the transmigrants. And so while there are a lot of houses now being built along the edges of the road, and the road now extends a fair way around Bird's Head, behind that are the poorer houses of the West Papuans going down to the water. Their abilities to make money is increasingly difficult. And those, of course, who are involved in democratic resistance are even more pressured, because they lose their jobs if they're civil servants. And the normal milieu or place for protest in the universities is no longer operating, because the university students are threatened that they'll be thrown out of university and taken out of their courses if they participate in any sort of demonstration. And the lecturers, the academic and intelligentsia amongst the Papuans are also threatened that if they are involved, they also will be dismissed from their positions. And so the West Papuans are demanding some resolution to all of this. And while President Yudhoyono has been trying to push through the last legal steps to have special autonomy plus brought into West Papua, every West Papuan that I spoke to sees that it will make no difference on the ground, as indeed a new president will make no difference. A new president in Indonesia will make no difference. And so there are banners around the place touting for either the Wibowo ticket or Jokowi ticket. Most of them are being disfigured, with also signs of boycott around the place. They're not just apathetic, the West Papuan people, they are actually angry and saying it's an irrelevancy for us. Whoever wins, there will be no change on the ground, politically, economically, and as far as our freedoms are concerned, whoever gets elected. And so the solution can only be in the hands of the West Papuans themselves. It can't be imposed from Jakarta, and it can't be imposed from outside. It has to come from the West Papuans themselves. And the many leaders that I spoke to acknowledge the fact that the democratic gathering in October 2011 in Aberdeen was a legal gathering whereby the democratic aspirations of the people were announced. The Declaration of Independence and the establishment of the Federal Republic of West Papua on the 19th of October 2011. So what they are asking is that they are listened to, that space be given to them now for the dialogue with Indonesia takes place, with a third party, international third party, to mediate in that, for an appropriate solution for the West Papuan people that has not been able to be resolved by the West or by Indonesia for the last 50 years. The other thing they are demanding is for international protection for the Jayapura Five, who are, in the next month or so, will be released, who are in jail now after 3 years, and especially for the President, Yahweh Sunwood, and the Prime Minister, Mr. Edison Waromi, on their release, that they are guaranteed protection by Indonesia and the international community. And that is what they are demanding. And I hope indeed that there won't be a repeat of what happened to the last elected leader after the second Congress in 2000, when Tace Eloe was elected, and after that assassinated by the military. And I hope that Indonesia has moved on. I'm sure it has. And we are requiring that Indonesia, that West Papua is given a voice and listened to.
Thank you. No, I heard you earlier saying you speak Indonesian, so you're probably better able to gauge what's going on there than our journalists from Australia who often have to go through a translator. Has there been any obvious reaction from Indonesia to the formation of that republic in 2011? We're not talking about at that time, but now. When Indonesia formed its republic in 1945, the response from the Dutch was swift and dramatic. Is Indonesia repeating that experience as well in West Papua?
I would say yes.
Right.
Not only its initial reaction in breaking up the Congress in which the declaration was declared, but jailing the leaders as the Dutch did Sukarno, and the military action. I understand that what is happening in Papua is an undeclared war.
Okay. Undeclared war. And so where would you say that places Australia? Australian government policy? What should it be? What are we going to do?
Well, up to now, Australia seems to have been operating on at a public stance to continue to ratify the current boundaries of Indonesia, which includes West Papua within that. Behind the scenes, they continue to say they are working on the issues of human rights with Indonesia, and also to encourage Indonesia to fully implement special autonomy. However, the discussions that Australia seems to have with Indonesia is with Indonesians, not with West Papuans themselves. West Papuans at the highest level. And so that obviously needs to be rectified. Australia needs to talk to a representative group of West Papuans, both within the Indonesian bureaucracy and also those who are democratically resisting Indonesian rule.
I don't know, can I just ask one more question? Sorry. Australia has said that it talks about human rights with the Indonesian government, and we've been hearing this, since 1975, first with East Timor. But where's the evidence? Like, did you talk to any Indonesian officials in West Papua and say, oh yes, we're getting information from Australia that we need to back off or we need to implement? I mean, where's the evidence of Australia's policy, even towards Indonesia, Australia's policy to Indonesia concerning West Papua?
I don't have any evidence that whatever Indonesia is told by Australia is making any difference. It is also difficult to find out whether there's any evidence that whatever the politicians in Jakarta want is making any difference in West Papua. Okay. I understand that West Papua continues to operate in its own little fiefdom, that there is a level of bureaucracy, but the shots are still being called by the military.
Thank you.
Yes, you were saying that West Papuan has been given their autonomy. The autonomy given by Indonesians and performed by the Indonesians, or the autonomy fully given to the West Papuan to actually performed by the West Papuan?
I think we hear from all the West Papuans, both within the government and those who are in resistance to Indonesia, that special autonomy has not been enacted, and certainly the issue that most Papuans feel is that it has benefited a few West Papuans. And so those within the upper echelons of government are receiving a lot of money. And they build houses in West Papua, in Jakarta. They enrich their own families, but nothing's happening on the ground. Let me give you one example. I spoke with one family where the son of one of the resistance workers there, one of the people who are involved in resistance to Indonesia. His son was 20 years old, riding his bike, run off the road, rammed into. There was film of him being beaten with a block of wood on his arm and leg. The young man was taken to the Manokwari hospital. After 3 days, still no help was given to him. No surgeon there in that hospital. I understand there's at least 150,000 people in Manokwari. There's no surgeon to look after this young man. Finally, they were able to get some money to get on a boat, not a plane, to take the young man to hospital in Jaipura, where it was too late to save his arm, and his arm was amputated. His legs still might be able to be saved, but 6 months after the pins that are still protruding from his leg, they haven't had the money to go back to get it out. The sort of money that they're talking about that's pouring into West Papua, that should be one of the best hospitals in the world. Unfortunately, it's not. And that's just an example of one family's experience of how special autonomy isn't working.
Since we're talking about it, I want to touch a little bit more about the issue of political prisoners. We've got a website on the internet that pretty much bring out what's happening to the political prisoners, but there's few mention about the families and what the impact to the family of the political prisoners. So, did you happen to meet with one of the families from the political prisoners? And if you did, what is life for them, like how they face the life, to daily life?
I didn't get a chance to meet with the families of political prisoners now, but I met with people who had been political prisoners. And so I met with one woman who was married to a West Papuan man in Manokwari, and he was resistant against Indonesian rule, and after 2 months being married, he was one of the freedom fighters with the OPM. He was then captured and sent to jail for 6 years. And so she saw him after 6 years after being married for 2 months. And there was no help from government.